What if you had the ability to fly, turn invisible, or grow to the size of a giant? It sounds like the ultimate dream. But what if I told you that gaining superpowers would actually be a biological and physical nightmare? If you actually got the powers you've always dreamed of, you wouldn't be fighting a crime. You would be fighting the laws of physics. But beyond the shattered bones and physical horror lies a much darker question. If you somehow survived the physics, would you use your power to become Superman, or would human nature turn you into Homelander? The reality of being a superhero is far darker than we've been told. To understand if you would actually be the good guy, we have to start by looking at what was hardwired into your brain before you were even 6 months old. To understand why we are so obsessed with capes and cowls, we have to look at our own biology. Psychologists at the Yale Infinite Cognition Center run a new famous experiment on babies under 6 months old. They showed them a puppet play where one bear helps open a box and another bear slams it shut. When given a chance, almost every baby reached for the helpful bear. It seems heartwarming, right? Prove that we are born with a justice instinct. But the scientists ran a second test. They found out what snack the baby liked, say graham cracker. Then they had a puppet choose a different snack. Suddenly, the babies didn't want that puppet to be helped. In fact, they overwhelmingly chose puppets that punished the one who liked the different snack. The terrifying truth is that we don't have a justice instinct. We have a biological tribal instinct. We want a savior, yes, but we want a savior who protects us and destroys anyone who is different. Now imagine giving a human being with that innate tribal biology the power to live in a city. They wouldn't save humanity. They would enforce their own brutal biases. But what happens to the mind of the person who actually gets those powers? We assume that if a normal human being gained the ability to fly or bend steel, they would use it to help people. But psychology tells a much darker story. Berkeley psychologist Dr. Dasher Keltner conducted an experiment known as the power paradox. He brought groups of 3 people into a lab to do a boring task, but randomly assigned one person to be the boss. After half an hour, a researcher brought in a plate of 4 cookies. Everyone politely took one. But the 4th cookie, the extra one, was almost always taken by the boss. Not only did they take it, but they ate it with their mouths open, a drop in grams, completely oblivious to the polite manners of the people around them. It sounds almost funny, but the implication is chilling. The human brain is so susceptible to corruption that just being given a fake title and meaningless lab experiment instantly erodes your empathy. If a tiny sliver of fake authority makes a human act like a selfish monster, what do you think would happen to a human brain if you gave it the power to outrun bullets? Thousands of years before comic books existed, the philosopher Plato already knew the answer. He told the story of the rain of Gyges, a magical rain that granted a simple shepherd the power of absolute invisibility. Plato argued that if you gave this ring to the most richest man on earth, he wouldn't use it to fight a crime. The moment he realized he was free from the eyes of law, free from the consequence, his morality would rot. The shepherd in the story doesn't become a hero. He uses his invisibility to infiltrate the palace, assassinate the king, and take the empire for himself. We look up at the sky and dream of superheroes. We think power would elevate us. But biology, psychology, and history all warn us of the exact same nightmare. Morality is a fragile construct built entirely on the fear of consequence. If a human being suddenly woke up bulletproof, invincible, or possessing the strength of a god, the social contract would shatter. They wouldn't be a selfish murderer. Without consequence, a human empathy dies. The savior inevitably becomes the tyrant. And the scariest part, the psychological corruption of a superhero is just the beginning. Because if a god among men actually decided to take a flight, the laws of physics would turn our world into a slaughterhouse. So the mind of a superhero would inevitably rot. But what would happen to their body? If we strip away the comic book magic and apply the unforgiving laws of biophysics, gaining a superpower isn't a blessing, it is a terminal diagnosis. Let's start with the invisibility. It sounds like the ultimate tactical advantage. If your body turns completely invisible, light passes straight through you. It never hits your optic nerve. Option A, you are 100% permanently blind, wandering completely naked into traffic in utter darkness. Option B, to actually see, your retinas must remain visible, meaning you would just be a pair of disembodied, floating eyeballs hovering down a dark hallway. What about super speed? You want it to be the Flash or A-Train from The Boys. If you scoop up a fragile, stationary human body and accelerate it to 800 miles per hour in a fraction of a second, you don't save them. The sudden G-force would instantly snap their neck, liquefy their internal organs, and turn your rescue mission into a biological sharpnail. You wouldn't just feel wind resistance. The fraction would heat the air to plasma, incinerating your skin and blinding everyone around you with the flash of the localized explosion. But the ultimate anatomical nightmare belongs to the giants, the titans, the hulks. If you grew to the size of a building, your weight would multiply by a factor of thousands, but your bones would not be thick enough to support it. The second you try to take a step, your femurs would splinter into powder under your own massive weight. Your brain would instantly die of oxygen starvation, and your heart would rupture from the pressure. You wouldn't be a towering god of destruction. You would collapse into a suffocating, paralyzed heap of shattered bone. Nature designed the human body with agonizing precision. When you break her rule, she doesn't turn you into a savior, she turns you into a casualty. So, we've stripped away the magic, we've engineered the perfect, indestructible weapon. But what happens to the fragile human mind driving it? Pop culture is currently obsessed with shows like The Boys and Invincible. We are fascinated by the evil Superman trope for a very specific reason. Deep down, our collective psychology knows that absolute power is a nightmare. The justice instinct we talked about earlier, it isn't magic. Biologically, human empathy is anchored in vulnerability. We help each other because we share the exact same moral experience. We know what it means to feel pain. We know what it means to be afraid. But what happens when you strip that away? If you engineer a human who is bulletproof, invulnerable, and capable of leveling a city in seconds, you haven't just removed their physical limits, you have destroyed their biological anchor to humanity without the fear of physical consequence. The human brain undergoes a terrifying psychological shift, dehumanization. When you can no longer be hurt, the people around you cease to be your peers. The social contract completely evaporates. To a god, normal humans undergo to a pet or pest paradox. At best, humanity becomes a planet of fragile pets that constantly need saving. At worst, we become a swarm of noisy, destructive insects. Why would the Titan care about a human loss? Why would they care about collateral damage when our lives flash by in the blink of an eye? We assume a superhero would be a selfless murderer, swooping in to stop bank robbers and catch falling cars. But without shared vulnerability, human morality rots. A being with absolute power wouldn't fight street crime. They would look at our wars, our corruption, and our chaos, and they would realize the most efficient way to save us is to strip away our free will. They wouldn't ask, how can I help them? They would ask, why am I letting them govern themselves? The savior inevitably becomes the warden. They wouldn't just fight a crime, they would conquer the world. We dream of superheroes because we feel small in a chaotic universe. We want an easy, magical solution to our problems. But the truth is, the only thing keeping us safe from the horror of gods is the cold, unforgiving laws of physics. We like to tell ourselves that the real savior of humanity don't wear capes, that they are the scientists editing genes to eradicate diseases, or everyday people who choose empathy, not because they are invincible, but precisely because they are vulnerable. We tell ourselves that we don't need fictional gods, we just need our humanity. But what if humanity is just as flawed as the villains we fear? The terrifying truth is, you don't need to be an invincible superhero to lose your empathy. In fact, psychological studies show that even as a normal, powerless human, you probably wouldn't save a dying person even if you easily could. Why do we walk past suffering? Why do our brains subconsciously calculate that some lives matter more than others? I break down the distributing science behind our broken morality in this video right here. Click on it and let's explore the dark reality of human nature. If this deep dive made you look at your favorite heroes a little differently, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.